Greetings, great bodhisattvas. Tom Inzan Gartland here, and this is Sangha Alive. And I'm just going to start by lighting the candles, offering the incense. So, I'm Tom Inzan Gartland, and as I said, this is Sangha Alive. Sangha Alive was started to provide a possibility for people who aren't able to practice with other people the opportunity to at least have a virtual Sangha. And Denny Wale and Julio Robles are my partners in this venture. And so I'm starting the Zen end of things. We've had a couple of hangouts already, and this is the first, hopefully successful Zen hangout. So what I wanted to do was start with just a few quotes from some of the Zen masters of the past that pretty well set the stage for what Zen is and what it has been for quite some time now, 1,500 years or more, actually. Bodhidharma, first Chan patriarch, came to China from India, and here's a quote from him. "To find a Buddha, you have to see your true nature. Whoever sees their true nature is a Buddha. If you do not see your true nature, invoking Buddhas, reciting sutras, making offerings, and keeping precepts are all useless. Invoking Buddhas might result in good karma. Reciting sutras might result in a good memory. Keeping precepts might result in a good life. Making offerings might result in future blessings, but not Buddha. If you do not understand by yourself, you will have to find a teacher to find the underlying cause of life and death. However, unless that person sees his or her own true nature, such a person is not a teacher. To find a Buddha, all you have to do is see your true nature. Your true nature is the Buddha. In addition, the Buddha is the person who is free of plans, free of cares. If you do not see your true nature and run around all day looking somewhere else, you will never find a Buddha. The truth is, there is nothing to find. Nevertheless, to reach such an understanding, you need a teacher, and you need to struggle to break through your own self-made limitations. Life and death are important. Do not suffer them in vain." Third Chan patriarch, Jianshi Senkan, wrote a poem called the Jinjin Ming. This is one of my personal favorites. "The great way is not difficult. It only excludes picking and choosing. Once you stop loving and hating, it will enlighten itself. Emptiness here, emptiness there, but the infinite universe stands always before your eyes. Infinitely large and infinitely small, no difference. for definitions have vanished and no boundaries are seen. So too with being and non-being. Don't waste time in doubts and arguments that have nothing to do with this. One thing, all things, move among rather, and intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. To live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. Huineng Sixchan Patriarch said, "You should not think of good and bad. Cut off all thinking and speech. Right now, what is your master?" Sinhei bowed and said, "I don't know." The Zen master said, "Keep this don't know mind at all times and you will understand." One day, sometime later, Huineng addressed the assembly. "I have an article which has no head, no name or appellation, no front and no back. Do any of you know it?" Stepping out from the crowd, Shenhui replied, "It is the source of all Buddhas and the Buddha nature of Shenhui." Huineng retorts, "I have told you already that it is without name and appellation, and yet you call it the source of all Buddhas and Buddha nature," reproved the patriarch. "Even if you confine yourself in a mat shed for further study, you will be a Dhyana scholar of second-hand knowledge only, that is, knowledge only from books and verbal authority instead of knowledge obtained intuitively." Linji, or Rinzai, if you do the Japanese Zen, said, "Followers of the way, if you want to attain real understanding of Dharma as such, simply do not be deceived by others. Whether you are facing internally or externally, whatever you meet, kill it. If you meet a Buddha, kill the Buddha. If you meet a patriarch, kill the patriarch. If you meet an Arhat, kill the Arhat. If you meet your parents, kill your parents. If you meet your relatives, kill your relatives. Then you will attain emancipation. By not being bound by anything, you will pass through freely. Of those followers of the way who come to see me from all over, there has never been a single one who appeared in front of me depending on nothing." Moving up to present day, Sun San, who started the Providence Zen Center and who came from Korea in 1973 and founded the Kwanum School of Zen in 1984. This is an interchange between him and one of his students. One day a student from Chicago came to Providence Zen Center and asked Sun San, "What is Zen?" Sun San held his stick high above his head. "Do you understand?" The student said, "I don't know." Sun San said, "This mind, this don't know mind is you. Zen is understanding yourself." The teacher says Zen is difficult. I say that Zen is very easy, but we are saying the same thing. Buddha said all things have Buddha nature. Joju, when he was asked if a dog has Buddha nature, said no. Is Buddha right and Joju wrong? These are just different ways of teaching. The true meaning of sitting Zen is to cut off all thinking and to keep not moving mind. So I ask you, what are you? You don't know. There is only I don't know. Always keep this don't know mind. When the don't know mind becomes clear, then you will understand. The great way is not difficult if you do not make distinctions. Only throw away likes and dislikes, and everything will be perfectly clear. So, one of the points of doing this today was to maybe answer some questions about Zen, dispel some misconceptions, perhaps, possibly cause some more questions, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. First of all, Zen is basically the Japanese translation of the Sanskrit word dhyana, meditation. So when Bodhidharma came from India, the Chinese transliterated the word dhyana into jhana, which then eventually became Chan. And then that practice spread to Korea, where it became known as San, to Vietnam, where it became known as Tien, and Japan, where it became known as Zen. And that's the word in the West that we're most familiar with. So we have the Zen Buddhist community on Google+. My own Sangha, which is not a Japanese-affiliated Sangha, is known as Original Mind Zen Sangha, and it's purely out of convenience. All language is conditional, and whatever word you apply to anything is also conditional. There are three types of ways to practice. Well, three main ones anyway. You have the Rinzai form or Kongan study, which is where, in addition to sitting meditation, those seemingly paradoxical questions are asked, and the student is asked to respond. Zhaozhou's Does a Dog Have Buddha Nature? Mu is basically the entry gate. Understanding Mu in here, not necessarily up here, is where the practice leads. There's also shikantaza, which is the Soto form of seated meditation. Shikantaza means just sitting. So according to Dogen, who is the founder of Zen in Japan, shikantaza itself, just sitting zazen, is enlightenment of itself. And in Korea, in addition to some Kongan study, there's also the Hwado. And a Hwado is similar to a Kongan, but it's generally just one question that your teacher gives you. Typically that would be, what is this? Who am I? And the answer that, again, should be felt here and not up here is invariably, don't know. What is this? Don't know. What is this that's feeling that emotion? Don't know. Heart Sutra tells us basically everything we're not, eyes, ears, nose, etc. It's not our perceptions, it's not our feelings, it's not our concepts. The point of Shikantaza, Hwado, and Kongan are all to cut off this inherent conceptual thinking. When we sit in meditation, we observe our breath. The breath is the anchor. Some people count 1 on the exhale, 2 on the inhale, 3 exhale, 4 inhale, and then when they hit 10, they start over again. When you hit 15, you just say, ah, I wasn't paying attention. So start over at 1 again, and do it without necessarily kicking yourself for having not been mindful. Zen practice is not about cutting off thoughts per se. Thoughts are going to come, thoughts are going to go. I've heard it said that when thoughts come, you don't have to invite them in for tea, right? You don't have to cling to them, you don't have to hang on to them. It's a matter of observing what's going on. When I started this today, there was some, pre-show jitters, some anxiety. And I asked myself, who is this that's feeling this anxiety? And it came to pass that, well, I don't know. So, from the Zen Buddhism page on G+, Google+, it says that Zen is a school of Buddhism emphasizing meditation and intuition. Zen is not dogmatic. Any attachment is a hindrance, including to the teachers, including that one. We sit meditation. Some of us work on kongans, which is unique to Zen practice so far as its main focus. Certainly other forms of Buddhism practice meditation. Some are purely in the mindfulness meditation end of things. Some, there's guided meditation. Zen, on the other hand, even though sometimes it's criticized for not being real Buddhism, so far as I'm concerned, in a lot of ways, Zen is truer to what the Buddha did in some ways, because he gained his enlightenment. Gained is the wrong word. Realized his enlightenment. Woke up by sitting in meditation and vowing that he was going to stay in meditation until that awakening happened. And he did. So in that regard, Zen is very true to the Buddha's own practice. Zen is a Mahayana school. That translates as great vehicle. At some point or another in the past, there was this division between Mahayana and Hinayana, and then came along Vajrayana. As I said, Mahayana is the great vehicle. Obviously, it was a Mahayana practitioner who decided to call the other guys Hinayana, which means lesser vehicle. And the Tibetans came along and said, yeah, we're part of the Mahayana end of things, but we're Vajrayana, the diamond vehicle. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha said, there is only one vehicle, the Buddha vehicle. All forms of Buddhism have the same outcome. I hesitate to use the word goal. And that's to attain enlightenment, to help others attain enlightenment, to realize our Buddha nature, to realize our awakened nature. What Zen does in order to accomplish this, in addition to meditation, is, as I said, some do Wado, some do Kongan practice or Koan practice in Japanese. And the point is, I had a teacher once talking about the Diamond Sutra. What she said was that Zen isn't about attaining anything, because there's nothing to attain. It's more about scraping off the layers of delusion and getting down to what's also been called the marrow, you know, what's in your bones. Waking up, seeing what reality truly is. You hear people talk about the absolute and relative, and that's sort of dualistic, right? Separating relative from absolute, just like we separate ourselves, what we think of ourselves, from the awakened ourself. That's not what Buddha nature is. In the absolute, there is no absolute or relative. It's just reality itself. Matsu said all dharmas are Buddha dharmas. So even the most unenlightened, let's say, behavior is a Buddha dharma, right? It's part of reality. There are unawakened, sometimes evil people, let's say, who do some evil things. They murder, they steal, they lie, they talk poorly of others, they defile the teachings, whatever sort of behavior it is that could be said to be less than enlightened. But that's part of reality. So like it or not, separating that relative aspect of things from the absolute is another delusion. The point of Zen is to cut down on the conceptual thinking. Sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly, depending on what school you belong to. For example, in Inzan, we practice sudden enlightenment and gradual cultivation. I had a teacher once who described it as water is either boiling or it's not. In America, that would be, it can get up to 211 degrees, but when it hits 212, it's boiling. That's what realizing your true nature is like. Soto Zen, through the Shikantaza, just sitting meditation, is thought of as a gradual awakening school. I had a teacher, I practiced Soto for a while, and I had a teacher there say, in the end, you end up wet. Sometimes people gradually walk through the fog to get wet, and sometimes people just throw a bucket at them. You're still wet. So the goal of Zen is to become wet, awakened, right? So there are some questions out there. That were posted. One was, how do we meditate? As I said, typically it's sitting meditation. There's also walking meditation. The idea is that we end up taking the cushion with us wherever we go. We try and stay in that meditative state. We try and maintain the don't know mind. Suzuki Roshi called it beginner's mind, where possibilities are open and infinite. Whatever the experience is, when red comes, reflect red. When white comes, reflect white. As any number of the quotes I gave you said, do not pick and choose. Do not make good and bad. When something that's quote-unquote horrific comes, then reflect horrific. When something wonderful comes, reflect wonderful. It's as simple as that. That's true nature. Some people realize it quickly, some people don't. There were any number of the Chan masters and Mahayana sutras that talk about people being of different capacities. Some are sharp and some are dull. And yeah, it's a little dualistic, but that's also the upaya factor, right? Knowing your audience, knowing what their capabilities are, if they're sitting there going, maybe you should peel back the teaching a little bit to something a little bit more basic. If they're totally enraptured with everything that you're saying, then continue that down that path. It's like the Buddha's Dharma eye, being omniscient. Well, that's basically seeing these capacities, paying attention to your audience. That's one of the things that makes these broadcasts a little weird, is because I'm sitting here in front of a monitor trying to maintain eye contact with a camera, trying not to rock around too much, which, not good, not bad. It happens. So it's tough for me right now to tell, you know, what the hell is this guy talking about versus, yeah, more. So I'm trying to play to either end. And hopefully we meet somewhere in the middle and take that middle path as far as understanding a little bit about Zen. Some of the questions that have come up have been things like, Kongans don't make any sense. What's the sound of one hand? Does a dog have Buddha nature? Any number of others. And on the surface, they're at best paradoxical. Like, what is the sound of one hand? Hands don't in and of themselves really make a sound unless you go, which could qualify as the sound of one hand. The point of Kongan practice is to drop the conceptual thinking, scrape off the layers of conceptual thinking that make us think we know what's going on, that our perception of reality is the correct perception, which in the Heart Sutra is said to be empty. I'm not really going to go into sunyata or emptiness this week. As I said, Kongan practice, Wado practice, is to scrape away the conceptual thinking to return to the state of don't know. Right? There's also a thought that I guess Zen in general and Soto Zen specifically is passive. It's just sitting there. You're not engaging with anything. It's just, you know, meditating. Well, Sung San talked about how one time he was asked about the difference between Soto Zen and Kongan Zen, Rinzai. And he said, externally, they're different. Only the method is different. Cutting off thinking and becoming clear mind is the same. There are two doors to the same room. If I'm attached to Shikantaza or to Kongan, then they are different. But if I am not attached, then they are the same. The end goal is dropping away of body and mind, as Dogen said, cut off conceptual thinking, return to the state of don't know. So just sitting in meditation, like I said earlier, Dogen and the Soto school in general says that that in and of itself is enlightenment. One time I was sitting with a Soto group, and although typically there is no guided meditation per se, you know, we were all sitting there and it was quiet. And right in the middle of it, Dairyu Michael Wenger from San Francisco Zen Center, right when it was probably at its quietest, least fidgety state, just screamed out in the middle of it, "Wake up!" Which certainly jarred people. In that minute, in that moment, there was only that shock, that startle reflex, right? As I said previously, in the Google Plus forum community, Zen is described as a school of Buddhism that emphasizes meditation and intuition. And there are different interpretations of what intuition are. For me, the end game, that which I try and cultivate, is having a natural response to situation, relationship, and function. When a baby cries, you pick her up and you comfort her. Right? If a child is running into the street, into traffic, you grab, pull them back. Right? There's no thinking involved in that. There's no, should I do that? You know, a couple of weeks ago in Denny's talk called The Pond, he was talking about, you know, you're walking through a park and dressed up for, let's say, a job interview or whatever, and you see a kid, you know, face down in a pond. So some of the reactions might be, you know, just dive in without any conceptual thought. Some might be, well, you know, I'm dressed up, going to a job interview. If I do that, my clothes will get wet, I'll probably be late for the interview, and maybe I won't do it. No, maybe I should, maybe I won't, maybe I should. In the meantime, the kid is probably drowning. So, as a Zen practitioner, the end game would be not to go through all of that consideration of, yeah, should I do that? Should I not do that? It's kids in a pond, grab kid, perform CPR, whatever might be appropriate in that situation. If it's your kid, giving them a smack and a scolding might be the correct response, the correct function in that situation. If it's somebody else's kid and, you know, mom is coming running, then maybe you let her do the scolding and the smacking, and you don't yourself. That would be incorrect function at that point. Not the best way to respond to the situation at hand. It's where the relationship comes in. It's like, I have relationships with my kids, I'm dad. I have relationships with bosses and coworkers, in which case I'm a coworker. You know, we have all these ways of dealing with different situations. Sometimes they involve assuming personas, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when we start believing the narrative and start believing the little stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, then it's time to step back and go into that don't know. What is this? What is this that thinks he's a coworker? Don't know. What is this that thinks he's a dad? Don't know. But when it's appropriate to do dad stuff, do dad stuff. Discriminating between good and bad, between I like this, don't like that, all the dualistic possibilities that exist due to our conceptual thinking are what we try and strip away, scrape off to get back to that true nature, to the essence of mind, as Huineng in the Platform Sutra says. That's obviously, he wasn't speaking English, so the translation of essence of mind may not quite nail the actual phrase he used, but you know, all language is provisional, including all of this. You know, I'm talking about Zen in this case. If I were to be realizing my true nature in and of that moment, there would be camera, there would be microphone, there would be monitor, there would be the smell of incense, there would be the taste of coffee. So, returning to the original state, call it don't know, call it true nature, call it whatever, beginner's mind. One mind was Huang Bo's phrase for it. Matsu used original mind. Whatever you want to call it, there's no it to it. It's just is. Return to that true nature, and you are Buddha. And on that, I would like to bid you a good day. Thank you for coming. And there'll be another Sangha Live broadcast next week, depending on your time zone. You know, in the East, it might be Sunday morning. Here in the East, in the Eastern United States, it might be Saturday night. But whatever it is, join us, and hopefully you'll return to your true nature. Okay? Thank you.